Audrey Powell, the other co-chair, will be here shortly and will preside over the second part. I now officially call the board meeting formally to order. We have a number of substantive updates for the board today. First, Chris Neal will provide a director's report. Second, we will vote on the 2025-2029 local plan, and then we'll hear from our colleagues at the Department of Youth and Community Development and the Department of Small Business Services about their proposed WIOA budgets for fiscal year 2026, and then vote on them. And then finally, we'll close with a federal workforce budget and policy update from David Fisher of the New York Association of Training and Employment Professionals. We'll now take a vote on the meeting minutes for the board meeting that took place on June 4th. You can find the minutes on page 4. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? Second, thank you. Okay. I appreciate that you were all looking for the minutes, but they are there, I promise. All in favor? Thank you. So the minutes are approved. We will now hear an update from Doug Lipari, Executive Director, Office of Talent and Workforce Development.
Thank you, Meryl. For those of you who I haven't met either in person or virtually or otherwise, Doug Lipari, I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Talent and Workforce Development. I had the fortunate opportunity to take over as an acting capacity back in April. I think I spoke to the board in the prior meeting in May. Happy to be, they lopped off the acting for me, so a little less of a mouthful, but acting, or no longer acting, but the executive director as of the very end of August. And so happy to be here again with you. Appreciate all of your work and partnership. In this new role, there's one word change to my title, but a lot of the work just remains the same, right? Talent is committed to making sure that New Yorkers have access to good paying careers and that employers have access to the city's talent, both to thrive today and in the future. And so I'm committed to that work. Our office is committed to that work and looking forward to continuing it ahead. I know there's a lot of substantive work, as Meryl mentioned, so I don't want to talk for a while, but I did just want to highlight a couple of things that we've been up to, and I'll just highlight last week. I won't go back to the past 6 months. But last Monday, we had an opportunity to celebrate, along with the Department of Design and Construction in Queens Public Library, the first ever construction contract that is subject to community hiring goals. And so back in 2023, when I first joined Talent as the lead of the Office of Community Hiring, it was a one-person operation. We had state legislation that just passed, but it wasn't signed. It wasn't in effect. We went through a whole rulemaking process, implementation, design, in partnership with a lot of people in this room, a lot of feedback, a lot of partnership throughout the entire city, both internal city agencies and beyond. And so it was a really exciting opportunity to actually put a, shovel in the ground and start some work at the Baisley Park Library out in Jamaica, Queens. So we were excited about celebrating that. And again, just a reflection of the city's partnership here at Talent with all the partners on the board and beyond. And then last Tuesday, I actually visited a training class hosted by DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. We joined the city's Chief Fleet Officer, Keith Kernan, and there was a training class on electric vehicles. And so this was targeted towards city employees who drive cars, which run the gamut from, any person who needs to get around from places to people who drive commissioners around and people who are out investigating and things like that. So there's a lot of city employees that drive cars, important to train them on electric vehicle safety, power, and maintenance. And this class is paid for actually by funding that the Workforce Development Board received through the New York State Department of Labor. And so I think Chris is going to update you all shortly on that, but just wanted to highlight that. That's the work in action of training city employees, really helping drive towards the goal that was outlaid in the Green Economy Action Plan, which our office co-authored with NYC EDC, and really preparing the city's workforce for getting electric vehicles on the road from the city. And so it was really exciting opportunity to be out there and see the employees get trained in real time. And so, just as that work is looking to the future, so are we, and so is the board. And really just enormously grateful for the work and time and partnership that so many people in this room and beyond this room, both from the city agencies who are here today, as well as the board members, we've been, and there's going to be a vote and discussion around the local plan, but so much work went into that. I was shocked and humbled by the amount of people who showed up during July. They didn't go on vacation, but they came to meetings that were in person or virtually for many, many hours and really provided critically important feedback to develop the local plan and the strategic planning process that is underway. So really just thank everyone for the dedication and commitment, for really helping map that ambitious plan and roadmap ahead. And so really have been excited to join on those meetings. We've had a lot of strategic sessions. I've been in all of them. I will continue to be in them, and really appreciate that this type of partnership is really laying the foundation for what can workforce development look like in the future. And I'm excited to continue this strategic planning process, but also the enormous amount of work ahead to actually implement that. And so just thank you all for your partnership on that. And with that, I'd just like to introduce Senior Advisor and Director of the Workforce Development Board, Chris Neal, to give the director's report.
Thanks, Doug. Good afternoon, everybody. We don't do these meetings in the afternoons very often, so thank you all for being here. And we're looking forward to your feedback if this is better than 8:30 in the morning. I kind of like the change up. I'm going to give a brief director's report just on a couple of items, one on funding and the other on our performance against the WIOA performance goals. Yeah, Adolfo, thank you. So, we have David Fisher, who's going to speak later from NYTEP, the New York Association of Training Employment Professionals, about the status of federal workforce funding and policy, but I want to give a brief update about our dollars. U.S. Department of Labor informed New York State Department of Labor, which passes the WIOA dollars down to local areas like New York City, that the money is going to continue to flow despite the federal government shutdown. But that it might be slow. It might be delayed because there aren't that many people that are still working. So, we are taking that at face value, just for context, and I'm learning some things about WIOA that I didn't know that well before. We get our funding. Our funding is made available in 3 tranches. We get at least the state gets youth money April 1st, the first quarter of the adult and dislocated worker money around July 1st, and then 3/4 of the dollars for the year on October 1st. They haven't received that last tranche yet, and we expected that. The money was allocated in the last federal fiscal year. So the money is available. They just need someone to push the button or whatever it is. So we are not worried, but we are monitoring it closely. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. And we'll let you know what happens. That's the first thing. The second thing is something that Doug mentioned, which is that the board receives some funding for renewable energy training. So New York State Department of Labor has a partnership with NYPA, the New York Power Authority, which is now a big player in workforce training, and particularly with respect to renewable energy. And they gave us $250,000. There wasn't a lot of time to sort of turn that around and program it. And as I think most of you are aware, to try to get something out and do a competition for funding takes a very long time on the city's procurement timeline. So we had to identify projects that were sort of already in motion that we could layer on or do within the city. So we supported a couple of things. Number one, we were pleased to support SBS's NYC Cool Roofs program. It's a program that serves low-income New Yorkers with paid on-the-job training around coating rooftops so that they absorb less sun and therefore reduce the energy usage there. So that's one of the programs. The other program is what Doug mentioned that he went on a site visit to. I got to join him, which is an electric vehicle training for city fleet workers. And this is, as Doug mentioned, the city is moving towards a 100% electric fleet. And so this is a step in helping some of the city employees learn about safety and power and maintenance of these electric vehicles. Any questions about either of those two? Oh, can somebody give?
Everyone. Good afternoon. Just a question about what is being allocated. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. What is being allocated for this year? And something that's on the budget regarding carryover, which I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself for the budget, but the question that you said, the money we're going to continue to flow from USDOL. In terms of last year's budget, which is FY26, vis-a-vis the 27 budget, are you saying that the allocation in spite of government shutdown will remain the same?
Essentially, yes. So the WIOA funds that we have access to in this fiscal year 26, those dollars were allocated by Congress in their last fiscal year. So the money is appropriated, it's signed off on, but there are still these 3 points in time when, again, I don't know the mechanics of it, but they have to make the money available to states to be able to draw it down and obligate it. And so October 1st is one of those dates. And so my point is just that, there are some things that are unusual that are happening in DC that we haven't seen happen before. So we're monitoring these things closely. USDOL has told New York State Department of Labor it shouldn't be a problem. But these are funds that were appropriated. They are not tied to the shutdown.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, next slide, please, Adolfo. Oh, I'm sorry.
One second. Oh, I can do it. So not to be overly self-focused, but Christina Ho from Con Edison, and just a question about the renewable energy training. You said not a lot of time to do a procurement. So you went to places where we have, I guess, existing relationships. If you were to get more money, would there be other places you wanted to spend it? Would there be things you would like to set up in advance? Having had this experience, if that were to come down the road again, not that I have a bucket of cash, but I don't have any money, but when money does show up, it would be great to be prepared. And if there's a way for us to help support things, it would be really good to know what the team is thinking about, maybe in advance, like what areas, or just anything renewable.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate that. I think we would very much welcome that conversation. Will there be more funds? This is a pilot year. This is the first year that New York Power Authority and New York City Department of Labor are partnering in this way. This funding was made available to all of the 33 local workforce development boards in New York State, not through a competitive process. It was just, if you have a scope of services and a budget that works, then the money is yours. There's also like a competitive application that took place last year that was for more money. What we're hearing now is that there's a chance we will see more money for next year. But it's not confirmed yet. And we don't know how much lead time we're going to have, but I think we would very much welcome that conversation, and particularly my colleagues in the remake industry partnership that you may know, Christina. Okay. I think they're very interested in this. So I think we would love to have that conversation. Terrific. Thank you. Okay. Go to the next slide. Okay. Wheel performance. So under WIOA, we are held to 15 different performance goals every year. And there are 5 goals each for each of the 3 buckets of money that we get from WIOA: youth, adult, and dislocated worker. And I'm very proud and pleased to announce that we passed 100% of our goals this past year. And I think we spent more time with the executive committee, maybe less time with the full board discussing this, but there was a measure that was giving us a lot of trouble. The adult credential attainment rate was one that we did not pass for 2 years in a row. Now, to be fair, it was never a performance issue. So credential attainment rate is of the people who enroll in training, a certain percentage need to demonstrate that they have earned a recognized post-secondary credential. Right. It's supposed to be a sort of an indicator of quality, a proxy for quality. And it was never an issue for us, but the issue was more around capturing the data and making sure it was transferring into the state's data system. And so Yuri and his team led a very robust effort over I think it was like the last year and a half to get things on track. And I'm really pleased to say that not only did we hit our goal, we crushed it. We got 114% of the goal that the state had set for us, 54%. We achieved 62%. Dislocated worker credential attainment rate in the past was one that had been tricky for us a few years back. We hit 119% of goal. And then the measurable skill gains, which is of those people who are in training, they have to demonstrate in some way that they are they're learning things. Either they've completed the training or they have some way of demonstrating that they're actually gaining skills. And this was one that we had some trouble with a couple of years back. Some folks may remember, but again, it was never a performance issue. It was just about do we have the right processes for capturing and recording the data? And so it's great to see that we're at 161%. So kudos to SBS and kudos to DYCD because we passed all of our goals this year. So we are free and in the clear. Any questions about that? Okay, I will turn it back over to Meryl.
So I'm going to show the slide on the local plan. Great. So we'll now move on and consider a motion to approve the New York City 2025 local plan, authorizing its submission to the New York State Department of Labor. As a reminder, creating a local plan once every 4 years is a requirement of each local board under WIOA legislation. And Doug alluded to this. I will emphasize again, thank you all for all of your time over the past few months of input into the local plan. And as Doug said, showing up at meetings and influencing what actually went in, as well as line edits by some of you, which were incredibly helpful. The final document, including all appendices, is 138 pages long and was formatted in the required template. The document was shared last week with members as part of the pre-read materials for today's meeting. On this slide, you can see the production and public comment timeline. The public comment timeline started on August 19th and ended on September 5th. We did not receive any comments during the public comment period, and as such, does not need to do any additional work responding to the submitted comments. That said, we did engage a wide variety of stakeholders during the process, and we are confident that the local plan reflects this engagement. Are there any questions before we proceed to a vote? Assuming you all read. Just so all of your questions are answered. So I have a motion to approve the local plan? Do I have a second? All in favor? Right, so the local plan is approved. Thank you. Now we'll move to the strategic planning update. So again, as many of you know in the room, in parallel to the creation of the local plan, the board is undertaking a strategic planning process in partnership with the Workforce Development Council and the New York City Talent Office. The work will articulate a collective vision for a more effective workforce ecosystem across the city as we strive to meet the needs of New York businesses and workers, especially in the context of a changing economy. The planning will also better define the board's role in advancing this work so that we can be an engine for the outcomes we want to see. to give a quick update, because many of you, again, have been in those planning sessions. Again, thank you for all of your time and commitment to this. Began the work in June with focus groups and smaller conversations, reaching more than 130 businesses, workforce providers, and other stakeholders from across the workforce ecosystem, as well as listening sessions with 7 of our key agency partners, as well as agency staff showing up at the strategic meetings, which has been great. We then convened a project steering committee, which identified 7 priority topics for us all to examine in depth at planning workshops. And you can see these topics on the screen in front of you. The 6 workshops we've already conducted have included more than 110 participants, averaging around 30 people per workshop. And I want to thank all of you again for participating in those sessions. Next week is the final session on board governance. All board members should have received an invitation to attend, but if you are not available and would like to chat separately, please reach out to me. We want as much input in this as possible. After these workshops conclude, we'll be reconvening the project steering committee to select those strategies we should prioritize and put forward. And these strategies, as well as some background on the state of the local economy and labor market, will then be written up in a strategic roadmap. Does anyone have any questions on this piece? And I mean it, if you're not able to make next week's session, please reach out to me and we'll chat separately, because I definitely want to make sure we get the full board's input, as well as some other key stakeholders who've been invited.
Could folks near the mics please check to make sure that they're off? I think sometimes we get feedback if more than one mic is off. You wouldn't mind? Thank you.
It goes back to just the local plan. So the next step is submission to the state, right? Is it possible the state could kick it back for any reason?
Highly unlikely. The state is just checking to make sure that we fulfilled all of the basic requirements and that we answered all the questions, but they're not going to review it substantively and say, you know, this section could use a little more zhuzh. They really will just make sure. No, yeah, I know. Right. I don't even know how to spell that word, zhuzh. And I don't know why I just said it. But anyway, it should be a cakewalk, because we were all very fastidious about making sure that we answered all the questions and provided all the attachments and everything.
And the state has to submit a plan too, right?
Yeah, the states submit a plan earlier in the cycle than local areas. So I think they published theirs maybe last year. And ours has to be set up in alignment with it, but we took that into account. And I mean, there's nothing in there that is overly constraining or, you know, anything that would be surprising to you. Just about creating a more unified workforce system across the state.
Yep.
No. No, I mean, it's not a budget document, and it's not a contract. It's a plan that answers a lot of questions about, you know, changes in like industry sectors in the economy and the workforce programs that we have and what different agencies play different roles and other partners. So it's not, it itself doesn't have, like, there's no budget associated with the local plan. There's the board's budget, but then the local WIOA budget, but it's not subject to audit. I mean, I think the contracts themselves would be, I mean, they were already subject to comptroller review when DYCD and SBS procured them, and they are mentioned in the local plan. But the local plan, sorry? Definitely the city. I don't think they're subject to the state comptroller. I've never seen that. So I mean, certainly as a regular, course of the procurement process, like the agencies have to submit their propose contracts to the comptroller's office is the last step before registration, as you know. So I don't think there's it would be unusual for the state comptroller to have anything to do with our contracts. Yeah, please, please. You're bursting.
We also have the pleasure of being fairly frequently audited by the New York State Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Labor. And it's not anything that we do per se. It's just that it's always random. And I say that in like air quotes, and usually who's selected is the city and then a smaller jurisdiction upstate. But we probably have about 2 to 3 audits a year. And we have no major findings in the past couple of years that I'm aware of any of those audits.
To be continued. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions on this piece? As many of you recall, at our June quarterly meeting, I announced a new WIOA budget process. In the past, the executive committee reviewed and approved the WIOA budgets. But starting in 2026, we have a new process. DYCD and SBS will first present their budgets to the executive committee, and then the full committee will review and vote on those budgets. DYCD and SBS presented their fiscal year 2026 budgets at our September executive committee meeting. It was a productive session. I personally learned a lot, so I appreciate all of your time in walking us through it. It was a productive session, and the executive committee recommends approval of both budgets to the full board. We will now consider each agency's budget, take a vote, and then hear a program update. So we'll start with an update on WIOA adult activities. First, we'll hear from SBS about their adult WIOA budget from Dinashal Gross, Commissioner, and program updates from Yuri Pawluk, Deputy Commissioner from the Department of Small Business Services.
Thank you, Meryl, and good afternoon, everyone. Our proposed budget, you'll find it on page 12 of your packet. We are proposing a budget of that total $73,761,548 for this fiscal year, which includes the full state allocation of $103.9 million, less a commitment of $30.2 million to fiscal year 2027. The table on the screen breaks down that proposed budget into the following categories: 33.4 million plus for our Workforce One Career Center network. That includes 18 Career Center contracts, 17 operating in physical space, Coney Island still operating virtually, and encompasses all the fixed costs, real estate, utilities, and the staff costs for those centers. We propose to spend just over $20 million on training programs, and we shared at the executive committee meeting some details on our training programs, which are about 24 this year and span a variety of categories from healthcare to construction industry, and with a small amount reserved for new programming to launch this year. Our funding for our business solution centers and our fast track programming, which is an entrepreneurial initiation curriculum that we offer citywide, is flat at $3.1 million. We have $15.8 million allocated for spending on SBS program personnel and OTPS, which includes software licenses and other costs related to delivering this programming, for the total of $73.7 million. And I'm happy to answer questions should you have them.
So of the $20 million that you have in training, since I represent public sector employees, it is estimated 10% of the city's workforce is in government or public sector. How much of the $20 million in training can be attributed to a public sector training?
So our training participants, may be New Yorkers who are incumbent workers or those who are unemployed and looking to upskill. So for our customized training program, I believe we worked with 15 employers last year. None of them are public sector employers. And then our other training programs have open enrollment, but I would have to search, Henry, to learn if we had incumbent workers in government who were in the training programs. None of the training programs are focused on upskilling public sector workers specifically. As I mentioned, we have training programs focused on the tech industry, that's Future Code and Tech Talent Pipeline, on the hospitality industry, which is our first course program, manufacturing and transportation, and construction industry jobs, healthcare, the apprenticeship programs, and then we have about $5.6 million for supportive services, including our stipend program, and $1.6 million reserved for training programs that we'll launch this year.
So for instance, the training you did with the nurses, which I think is fantastic, right? That doesn't fall within this category?
It does. So our CUNY Nurse Fellowship Program, our Healthcare Accelerator Program, those fall within our training budget, which totals $3.1 million.
Okay. Well, what I would suggest respectfully, since I represent people who work for government, is that there would be some focus on especially low-skilled training that may be displaced as a result of either implementation of AI or new processes in food industries, so maybe displacing them by nature of the job changing, especially low-skilled workers in school food or trainings in CUNY. For instance, there's a lot of new jobs that are completely being outdated by automation or stuff that where those folks either have been working for government 10, 15 years and they sometimes make it difficult, but they often are left out of the discussion about either displaced or potentially displaced workers as a result of technology development. So respectfully, I would recommend if there was a way to look into those, I think I would really appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the suggestion, Henry, and we'll follow up.
Question. On average, how many people are trained in the course of a year? Do you have an idea?
Yes, you're
Yes. Can everybody hear me? We trained 18. I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. We trained 8,000 people last year. It was about a 10% increase over the previous fiscal year. We're very proud of it. Some of that cohort was trained in our occupational training programs. They're the training programs that the commissioner just spoke about. They're often a customized curriculum for our population, several months or even longer in duration. We also trained a number of individuals in our construction site safety program, which is a much shorter program, but it has a broader reach. It serves a lot of underserved and marginalized individuals throughout the city. And we also have ITGs, our individual training grants. The board votes on preferred occupations for those every year. We just added a few occupations such as, KSAC and cable installation. You'll recall in the past year. And so that rounds out. So like I said, we trained a total of just over 8,000 last year.
Graphics of the folks that are coming into the training, because that could help get to some of the question down there in terms of whether it's public sector folks who are looking to be upskilled within their roles.
We do collect demographics, and we share demographic data, I believe twice a year in the WorkSource data portal. Although, of course, this is sensitive data and it's mostly self-reported data on but we collect information on, where folks live, their ethnicity, their prior work, salaries in their prior work, veteran status, and some other statuses that help us identify if they're part of priority populations that we work with in the system.
Other questions? Okay, we'll now take a vote on the WIOA adult budget. You can find the WIOA adult budget in your book on page 12 and the resolution to approve it on the following page. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? All in favor? Okay, so the WIOA adult budget is approved. Oh. Sorry, two abstentions. Oh. The WIO budget is approved for fiscal year 2026. And now I'll turn it over to Audria.
Thank you, Meryl. Oh, sorry. So I'm about to bring up Valerie and crew, right? All right, so. Yuri didn't finish.
Oh, no worries. Good afternoon, board members. It's great to see you. Hope you're doing well. If you enjoy pumpkin spice latte season, if that's your thing, hopefully we'll get some nice fall weather soon because it's been a little bit erratic, but it's good to see all of you. We had really what I would say, if you'll allow me to say, a very strong year this past year. On all of our key indicators, they're up at least 10%. We had an increase at the front door in terms of the number of individuals served, which is a 12% increase. We also had an increase in the average wage paid of about 3%. Also had an increase in the number of hires placed. That was a more modest increase of about 1% in terms of job placements. And we also had, like we just indicated, saying about a 10% increase in the number of training enrollments this past year. Really, we can attribute a lot of things to the increases in the Workforce One centers. We've done a lot of enhancement of professional development for Workforce One center staff. Taking a page from the board's playbook, had strategy sessions with center leadership, with center staff as well. Revising some policies to have more flexibility in terms of hiring. And also I wanted to talk about the previous question a little bit about public sector hires. It's an area that under the commissioner's leadership, we've been really focused a lot on. In previous years, there may have been a sentiment that because it's within the city, it's part of the family, that really a lot of work does not have to be done to boost public sector employment. We definitely don't subscribe to that strategy currently. We've been partnering a lot through Jobs NYC, which I'll talk a little bit more about, to encourage public sector employers to be part of our job fairs, our hiring halls, through a partnership with DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, through both commissioners working together at those agencies and OMB in order to be able to even do quicker hiring in some cases if individuals are hired through a hiring hall. So I know that doesn't exactly get to the issue of increased training opportunities to public sector employees, which we'll certainly look at, and we appreciate that suggestion. But we value public sector employment. We want to do everything that we can to support our fellow agencies, and we very much encourage careers in city government. So just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that. We want to continue to make sure our partnerships with businesses are strong. It's very unique in that we have two sets of clients. As you know, there are our job seekers and our businesses as well. So, we formed a new business development team, which we continue to strengthen. And we're also increasing our oversight and our partnership and professional development with business development managers at the Workforce One career centers. In terms of training, the commissioner alluded to some new programs that we've launched, and we're going to launch more. One was our Healthcare Accelerator program, where we invested $500,000 with Kingsborough Community College in order to get individuals rapidly trained in healthcare careers. So things like pharmacy tech, phlebotomy tech, patient care tech, doula, careers where you can receive training in a couple of months. So we were able to train over 400 individuals in a very short amount of time. It's something where we partnered with our CUNY colleagues on amazing training that already existed, as opposed to having something custom developed for us. And like I said, it allowed us to serve more individuals in a shorter amount of time, without having to do extensive RFPs and those nature. And that's a benefit of the innovation of our colleagues at CUNY, and also of city contracting rules, which allow us to work with CUNY in a more nimbling way. So we look forward to the Office of Career and Industry Partnerships and my team. We've been meeting. We're going to be meeting some more, talk about additional collaborations that we can do. Also had some pre-apprenticeships in the construction industry that helped us get across the finish line and have stronger goals as well. And we're exploring, for example, additional training opportunities in the healthcare sector and in green jobs. So we're very, very excited about that. Just wanted to spend a very brief amount of time talking about Jobs NYC. If you'll recall, that's a signature mayoral initiative to really look at communities that are underserved, that have members of marginalized groups, individuals that have traditionally been redlined from good jobs, areas where unemployment is high. So we've been targeting those particular zip codes. Our signature initiative is our hiring halls. We've been hosting those now since February 2024. And as you'll see in the statistics, now the numbers are up to over 15,000. But as of July 1, the numbers were over 13,000 job seekers. And we're very proud. The satisfaction rates are very high. We take surveys after each and every hiring hall. It's a representative sample, usually at least 30%, if not, sometimes we have 50, 70% participation in the surveys. And our employer satisfaction is close to 100%. And our job seeker satisfaction is close to 90%. So we're very excited about that. We're doing some new initiatives. We're doing some community grants. We've already enlisted some community partners, some chambers of commerce, some other organizations in order to help us hold hiring halls and job fairs. We've also offered micro grants to small CBOs, for example. One is doing an HVAC program. And they needed some money for certification. They got money from the state for most of the program, and they needed extra money. So their heating, venting, and air conditioning students could get a certification. So we're able to help them out. We're also going to do some business development activities with community partners. So it's yet another way that we can focus on these underserved neighborhoods and really involve our chambers of commerce and our CBOs in this work. So we're excited about that. We also have some new outreach activities that we're going to do this year with a mobile unit, and just getting out into the communities more, some new collateral materials and things of that nature. So I think I probably talked a little bit too long, but we had a very strong year, and I appreciate the board's partnership very much. Yes.
You're right. Just two things. Number one, the Kingsborough Allied Health Program is like second to none. And it was an outgrowth of the fact that their nursing program was so competitive and they could never capture all of the interest because they just didn't have enough capacity. So I don't know, I want to say 20 years ago, I helped design some of the allied health programming. So I'm so glad that it's such an efficient use of resources to kind of like just build capacity in because those programs work really well. And then just on the second thing, it's great to partner with you guys on the hiring. It's been an amazing partnership for our chamber. It's expanded our ability to do more in our community in Brooklyn. So just thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
Erie, on the training program completion to enrollment rate, overall looks like about 75% of the people who enroll complete. Is that completion data complete, or do those numbers rise over time?
Great question. They do. One of the difficulties. So some of you may know that I have a background in higher ed as well. And the way higher ed does training on the calendar is a little bit cleaner because they either have the spring semester, summer semester, or the winter semester, and you can pretty much count what happens in any given academic year. Our programs don't necessarily, some of the numbers don't necessarily translate into a particular fiscal year because they carry over into the following fiscal year. So I would say some of it would account for that, definitely. I would say the more time elapses when a training program concludes, the better numbers that we have there. And also, you know, we don't start contracts necessarily at the same time every year. So our NCLEX program, for example, the contract one cohort could start 1 year in January and the next year the cohort could start in, March. So there's a little bit of a mismatch, but do want to say that we are doing things to enhance our numbers further in terms of not only completion or graduation rates, but also job placement rates. And part of it is not only looking at different trading models, which I talked a little bit about in my talk just now, but also enhancing our use of performance-based contracts. So very similar to what to the new model that the board approved back this summer or the late spring for the Workforce One career centers, where we increased the percentage of the contract amount that was tied to performance. We've been doing that on a routine basis with all of our contract renewals. So the idea is, although each training provider will get some base amount of funding for the curriculum and for staff, that some substantial percentage, usually around at least 15%, is linked to graduation and placement rates.
Got it. And then a specific question as it relates to the sector-based occupational training for healthcare. That completion rate was only about 12%. And I'm wondering if that represents a timing issue.
It probably is a timing issue there. I've tasked my team with looking into the completion rates much more for each individual program. So we should have more information later this year. Part of the difficulty with these numbers is that they represent all of our programs across the board. So for healthcare training, it could be the nursing program, it could be our NCLEX program, it could be ITG vouchers as well. We would need to, happy to dive in with you more with those numbers for specific programs. And we're also, like I said, not only enhancing the number of performance-based contracts that we use, but looking at each program individually and thinking about what we can do to increase numbers for them. And there will almost certainly be programs that we don't continue, and there will be other programs because the placement numbers aren't as good. And there will be other programs that we will continue because the numbers are strong, and others that we enhance to get the numbers stronger, that we tweak the model.
Thanks.
Just wages. That's for salaried employees.
So no benefits,
for hourly employees.
no benefits associated with it.
Correct.
Thank you.
But about close to our full-time placement percentages in the high 80s. So most of the jobs that we place, that our career centers place people, are full-time jobs. But in our experience, we want to make sure that part-time opportunities are available as well. One of the statements we've gotten back from our career centers is that there's a demand sometimes for seasonal employment, sometimes for individuals that have caretaking responsibilities for part-time during the day, that we make more part-time opportunities. So we've done that. But to your point, we want to make sure that most of the opportunities are full-time and they're of and that they pay wage more than what the, base wages, more than what, minimum wage happens to be. It's the average wage across all placements. Correct. Different labor laws mandate that benefits come with a full-time job. Sure. Yep, we can definitely do that. We can absolutely do that. I think that's a really great suggestion. My team did, a goals for the year, a strategic visioning session, actually in this room about a week and a half ago. And one of the goals that we set for the year is engaging clients more. In terms of, it's important not just in the surveys at the end of hiring halls, but in other ways, talking to clients directly and making sure that we're giving them the service that they need. So we do customer service surveys on occasion at the centers. It's mandated by law or mandated by, regulations. But the engagement that you're suggesting, really engaging with some individuals that have gone through training and dropped out, I think that would be very, very valuable. So I will follow up. Sure. I think that's a very good point. One of the challenges, if I'm allowed to say, with our training programs is there are kind of opposite ends of the coin. On the one hand, there's the program like Health Accelerator, where we were rapidly able to train folks in a class at a very competitive cost, at a very cost efficient way to the city. And then there are other training programs which are much longer and much more hands-on, but they're at a significantly higher cost per trainee. So one of the things that we're looking at, which I've actually tasked my team to do, so this is very timely, is how can we offer more programs that are somewhere in the middle, where we're able to expand our footprint and because there's a call for the federal government for more training opportunities. We're not receiving any more WIOA money anytime soon, so we have to be great stewards of what we're doing. But balancing getting a lot of people in training, but also making sure they have the support that they need, that there's the warm handoffs that you're talking about, that there's more help that they need with job placement, if they need a connection to services or things of that, wraparound services that many people need to succeed in the workforce. So that's a very well taken suggestion, as is the recommendation to consult participants why they weren't able to, finish. That's very valuable as well.
Meryl, I'm sorry, I'm going to, speaking from experience, it's tough. I mean, life gets in the way sometimes. Some of the equation is just about when are they considered officially enrolled in a particular program, right? Because people will start a program and, 3 weeks in, 2 weeks in, they'll drop out. And there are ways for contractors to sort of look at sort of almost like a pre-enrollment to ensure that someone's serious about a training before they actually enroll them in as a WIOA participant. So, part of it is on the contractors is really what I'm saying in terms of how they structure that program. So,
I mean, my philosophy to this job towards day one, and I think I'm very lucky to have it and work with such a talented group of colleagues, is that even though there's some New York City exceptionalism, right? And we'd like to think that we do things really well. There's always room for improvement in all areas. And I think with our training, I look at it very much as we have a finite amount of money to do training every year, and we have a finite number of training slots. So we have to make sure that we do the most that we possibly can to train the most amount of people that they're able to complete the training and get a good job. So to the extent that we're not doing that, I think our numbers overall are pretty good, but they could definitely be higher. So, I've tasked my team, looking at data program by program, looking at different training models. We also offer stipends, which we haven't talked about a lot today, but that's an important component that the commissioner mentioned. So seeing what impact stipends have, and like, do they have the Center for an Urban Future has released reports saying that that's the single biggest factor in completion rates, which is receipt of a stipend. But I wouldn't say that I disagree with that statement, but I also would say that, we would need more information to know whether that applies in New York City programs in all cases. So it's things like that, but I value the board's recommendations and suggestions very much. I think there's more work to be done.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm going to go first. Valerie's going to go second. That's okay. My name is Artisan Mogan. I'm the Senior Budget Director at DYCD, and I'm going to be presenting on our proposed WIOA budget for 2026. Is that better? Perfect. Great. Thank you for putting it up on the screen. As you can see, we have a proposed budget of $34.3 million in 2026. And it's allocated across our DYCD 2 WIOA funded programs, which are the out of school youth and the in-school youth. And there's other lines there that supports the out of school youth and in-school youth as well. On a contractual basis, the OSY has a budget of $19 million. ISY contractual budget is just over $6 million. Together, those two represent 72% of the $34.3 million. Our next line is the DYCD personnel at just under $3 million. The internship lines for the OSY internship, and I'm sorry that the line below OSY internship should also say ISY internship. Apologies for that. Our out of school youth internship is $2.3 million, and our in-school internship is just over $2 million. And again, the sum of those two represents 13% of our award. If we were to add the contractual amounts and the wages amounts, 85% of the WIOA grant is supporting the in-school youth and the out-of-school youth with contracts and participant wages. The rest of it is spent on our other personal services and technical assistance, just over $800,000. And as of this time, we have an unobligated amount of $1.3 million, and that rounds out the $34.3 million budget. Absolutely. You're very welcome.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, artists. Thank you, chairs. Thank you, everybody. Really excited to share some of the incredible amount of work we've been doing at DYCD in the division that I have the privilege of overseeing, the Workforce Connect division. As many of you know, our charge has expanded significantly over the last several years. So I have a lot to share with you. I'll go as fast as I can, but Chris encouraged me to brag. And so I am here to do as much of that as I can. But I think it's all real and good. So of course, our signature program is SYEP. We completed our 4th year in a row of offering 100,000 paid opportunities to young people this summer. Thank you. And I just have to say I've been working on SYEP in some way, shape, or form for 14 years, and seeing it grow from only 30,000 baseline slots to 100,000 baseline slots has been incredible and beyond everything I think any of us could have imagined. And it's going really well. So it's a testament to our providers, to all of the people who have advocated for this program. It's such a passion project of mine. I just love it so much. And I hope next summer, anyone who wants to come out on a site visit for SYP, please reach out to me. I will take you anywhere you want to go. There are so many cool things to see. We did have 209,000 applications for SYEP. And for context, record breaking is an understatement. The year before we had 183 applications. And so this tells me a few things. There's a tremendous demand for the program. It means we've done a really good job making SYEP be a part of what young people expect to do over the summer in New York City. But we need to deliver on that promise. So we have a long way to go. We have twice as many applications now as we have slots. So we're back to where we started and need more resources. Thank you. We continue our focus on priority populations. We had 15,000 young people who reside in NYCHA, 20,000 young people who reside in the 6 precincts with the highest rates of gun violence, 4,000 young people who self-reported as having a disability participate in our program. We continue to offer financial literacy programming to every young person who participated. They're required to do at least 2 hours of financial literacy prior to starting their internship. We had new offerings, a CUNY Reach pilot, where young people through SYEP were able to earn college credit over the summer, getting paid for those hours in conjunction with their internship. I had the amazing privilege of visiting one of those programs and listen to young people make pitches on their entrepreneurship projects that they did as part of their CUNY class. And then many of those young people were able to have a job that was related to being an entrepreneur. It was really cool. And right now we're enrolling for Work, Learn, Grow. We have 7,000 slots, and that's the year-round extension of SYEP. Our newest program, moving outside of SYEP to everything else we're doing. Yeah.
Hello. Oh, I did it. Again, this isn't a question. I just wanted to make a comment on this program. Con Edison had 60 of the students this summer, 2 of which were in my department. And I just have to applaud the quality of the students that were brought into this program. We had 2 of them, and the level of content and work output from these folks was exceptional. One of ours was working on climate resilience initiatives, identifying dams across the entire city in Westchester, and identifying deluge flooding potential and working with our emergency prep teams. So they weren't just moving boxes around, they were doing really valuable work. We got a lot of really, really good content from them, and they know how to use Copilot. So I just wanted you to all know that if I can get 2 more next year, I'm going to take them, because they were fantastic and we really got a lot of value out of it.
I have 100,000 of them for you.
Okay. I got you. I might need to get some new chairs. Thanks. It's an exceptional program.
Thank you very much. And Doug and I were able to visit Con Ed and see, in addition to the internships you all hosted, you hosted a career day for young people in our younger youth program. And it was just awesome. They got presentations from folks who work at Con Ed, hearing about all different jobs there. And then they got to spend the day at the Con Ed Center. It was so cool. I mean, I never got to do that in high school.
Say we were so impressed by one of the students that we actually invited her to come back about a month later. She presented to our CEO, and he was really, really impressed, and said, how many more of these can we get? So I think that, I think there's going to be a long partnership there.
I love it. Yeah.
I mean, she came in and did a whole presentation for him with some of our other internship program. We have other internship programs that we bring folks in on. 3 people came in and presented to him on their experiences and what they accomplished, and he was very, very impressed.
I love it.
And I think I was licking paste at that age still, so.
I'm back. SYP is a great program. How did the fraud with the cards affect your budget?
That is a great question. I'm assuming that everybody saw this news. This was an incident that happened with SYP this summer where a number of the majority, about 70% of our young people are paid through direct deposit, something we're incredibly proud of because we also encourage our young people to get banked. However, for young people who aren't banked, they are able to get their SYP funding through a debit card. And there was an issue, and in full transparency, we still don't know what the issue was because it happened far outside of DYCD's reach at the banks that we contract with to do these debit cards. But there was a TikTok challenge where young people discovered that they could go to an ATM and withdraw, in some cases up to $100,000 in cash in an hour. And so, of course, I woke up, didn't wake up. I was woken up at 2:00 in the morning one day with an urgent text message. Oh my gosh, I just heard that someone's SYP account is negative $100,000. And as we started to look into this, we uncovered that there was a glitch, on the bank side. This impacted a small number of young people. It was significantly less than 1,000. I don't know the exact number as we're landing, and it did not have any impact on the city's funding. So all of the city's funding still was secured, was placed into the bank accounts of the young people that worked. All of the young people were paid for any hour that they worked, regardless of whether or not they were involved. And there's an investigation ongoing, on the bank side where this incident took place. That has now left the purview of DYCD completely and is happening at the NYPD and DOI and beyond us. So the short answer is it was a really unfortunate because it did impact some of our young people. But in terms of the program, we didn't lose any funding. The city's dollars were all secure. There was no breach of young person's information on the DYCD side. But there is a serious issue that we're following up on with the banks that we work with for this. Does that answer?
This is loud. Hi.
My favorite state senator from the great borough of Queens, the Honorable James Sanders. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I know. I remember seeing,
but that's okay.
I remember seeing that TikTok video my nephew showed me. It was crazy. I am someone that went through SYEP when I was a kid, and so I really have a special place in my heart for this program. I know it's very important. I do want to note this is the second time I'm hearing about, there's twice as many youth applying for the program than employers. I would love to know, one, what DYCD is doing to intentionally try to curb that, especially because I know a lot of NYCHA residents that are applying and they're not getting in regardless of being a priority population. Two, the other thing that we are hearing from a lot of our nonprofit partners is the quality of the location that they're placed. So we are hearing of youths being placed as porters, moving boxes and stuff like that, which are not necessarily bad jobs, but we would like to have a diversity of opportunities and awareness, especially again for Black and Brown communities who are always put into physical labor. So we'd like to know both points, what DYCD is doing, one, to be intentional to increase the number of job placements, and two, what DYCD is doing to be intentional about the quality of the locations that the youth are being placed.
Yeah, those are both incredible questions. Thank you very much for them. So in terms of the gap between the 100,000 and the 200,000, that is not a lack of employers. We actually turn away employers now too, which is baffling for me to say. It's just really a lack of resources. DYCD pays the wages. And so we have the funding that we have. We do everything we can to maximize it. We pay for as many young people as we can, but our budget right now covers 100,000 slots. In terms of the job quality, our philosophy at DYCD is that our goal is youth choice, right? And so we hear from young people is a lot of them want to be at summer camps. And if that's where they want to be, we want to have a placement for them in a summer camp. If they want to be in a hospital, we hope that we can have a place for them in a hospital. Does that always happen? Absolutely not. There's a huge diversity of quality in terms of the community-based organizations that we partner with. And so we invest really heavily in capacity building for the nonprofits, which to me is the role that DYCD can play in helping them do a better job of matching young people to jobs that they want to be placed in. I think we have a lot of room to grow. We're actually, where's Jane? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this out loud, but I will say we are working with public schools right now to do a lot of intentional planning around like thinking about a young person's experience in high school and how that ties to what type of job they have. And we're bringing in like industry champions to help us grow our number of jobs in some of the most in-demand sectors. And when I say in demand, I mean what the young people are telling us they want to do. So we're focusing on healthcare, which is number one. Young people always want access to healthcare jobs. We hear it in every survey. We're going to have a healthcare champion. So we are trying to address this problem. I think I wouldn't even call it a problem. I would just call it like an area of growth for us as we've scaled the program to 100,000. I think we need to make sure that like the quality of jobs keeps up. I couldn't remember. Like, did we publicly announce that yet? I guess now we did.
I just want to put a little bit of a different spin on that. It used to be when we were 30,000 and then 50,000, we were intentionally looking for larger placement sites because it was easier to manage, right? But what you've really done a great job at as you've grown is ensuring that small businesses have access to the youth as well. And look, some youth are good for working in a large hospital and some will thrive in a small business where one day they're doing one thing, the next day they're doing payroll, right? Because that's what the small business needs. So that I appreciate that it really has been a much wider sort of range of opportunities that they've been tapping into. As a chamber of commerce that works with small businesses, this has been a beneficial piece of it. So
thank you.
Valerie, one question about your being oversubscribed from a business perspective, which is outstanding, and the constraint being funding. Is there a mechanism by which you could either ask those businesses that are on the so-called waiting list, hey, we've got lots of students who are interested in working, you have to do the old-fashioned thing, pay them? Or can you go to the initial 100,000 employers and give them an option of paid versus city funded?
I promise I didn't pay him to ask that question. Yes. And so we have a cohort within the Summer Youth Employment Program called Ladders for Leaders. And the goal of that cohort is that we want employers to pay the wages. And the benefit. So in SYEP, we don't give our employers the ability. I mean, they can, of course, we match young people, but they're not interviewing the young people all the time and bringing them in. We're placing young people at jobs that we think. In Ladders, it's intended to be a competitive process, and we're doing much more intentional pre-employment training. And the pitch is we're doing all of this training and onboarding, and you, employers, we want you to pay the wages. What I will say is that we just don't have a lot of success getting employers to step up to the plate. We have some great examples where we've done this really well. I think I've talked in this group about our partnership with Repney, which has been absolutely incredible in that they bring employers to the table who pay wages. We work with Mayor's Fund to try to bring, we have a partnership with Santander who donates funding to do wages for their participants. But yes, my honest answer is we need much, much more of that in order to be able to scale SYEP to the scale that it could be.
Just to that point, sorry, David. Just to that point, and I know we're behind time. I think it's important understanding, if you are serving these youth and understanding what industries they're focused on, even if you don't have the budget, there are budgets in those industries that can help subsidize labor. So for example, in like our clean energy industry, the state agency, which is NYSERDA, like they actually fund up to like $18 an hour for an intern for 480 hours. And so that's like a strategic funding source that you all can leverage. And I do think that, Ladders for Leaders is great. We've used it, but it's very small. It's very competitive on the employer side to get it. And as a small business, it's rather difficult to, compete with the larger firms out there. But I do think there can be an opportunity through your general SYEP to ask employers at that point in time and then ask them if they know about other wage subsidy programs so that you're not turning away kids. Because one thing that I'm mindful of, and again, of the nonprofits we work with, there's a couple of youth that have been turned around 3 or 4 times from SYP. So their entire high school experience, every summer they've applied for SYP and every summer they've been rejected. And so I think that's also something important to note in terms of the workforce trajectory for New York City residents and New York City kids. If they haven't gone through SYP, they've applied 4 times, they've been rejected, they're going to be less likely to go into the Workforce One Career Center because they're already demoralized of the experience that a city program is offering.
I know I'm out of time, right? Y'all of SYP, I really thank you for that.
Here now? Is it that it needs to be on the mic?
Hey, this is David. Are folks waiting for me?
Yes.
Sorry, I just said in the text, I can't hear what's going on in the room, so.
Can you hear
apologies for
now?
that. I can hear you now. Yes, thank you. Great. Well, I know we're running a bit behind and I want to make sure we have some time for questions. So we'll keep this quick. Whoever's controlling the slides, can we go to the next one, please? I'm David Fisher. I'm the interim executive director at the New York Association of Training and Employment Professionals, or NYATEP. I'm guessing most of you are familiar with NYATEP. If you're not, we are New York's only statewide workforce development industry association. We have over 150 members statewide, including training providers, multi-service nonprofits, colleges and universities, employers and industry associations, and all 33 of New York's workforce development boards, including, of course, yours in New York City. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about federal workforce policy and funding. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not a particularly happy story, but it does have its interesting parts. And as you all know, we're in a federal government shutdown right now. The shutdown isn't about workforce development in any meaningful way, though I do think some of the issues in workforce are representative of larger issues, and obviously the outcome will have major consequences for our work. Next slide, please. The first logical question to ask is, what does the shutdown mean for workforce? And the unfortunately frustrating answer is, we're not exactly sure. Chris explained some of this earlier in his update, so I'm going to keep it brief. He mentioned that the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is what's known as forward funded because the WIOA and WIOA program year and the overall government fiscal year run on different cycles. WIOA is from July 1st to June 30th. The federal fiscal year is, of course, October 1st to September 30th. It's forward funded, so adult and dislocated worker dollars are released in two tranches. The first is available in July, and the second larger tranche is theoretically available on October 1st. Now, all these funds were appropriated back in March for fiscal year 25 in a deal that Congress made to finish out that budget. So you'd think, all right, well, this is all good. And Chris mentioned that state DOL said, oh, yeah, it's going to be fine. I'm not sure that it's all good. The Employment and Training Administration within the US DOL needs to obligate those funds for each state. And the shutdown means that ETA has seen its workforce go from about 1,000 people to about 30 essential workers. They're there primarily to deal with disaster assistance and, kind of ironically, to make sure that Job Corps sites are safe and secure. So, that's not a lot of people for a lot of work. And that's assuming that the Trump administration even wants to obligate the funds. They took their time with the first tranche. But whatever their intentions, having 3% of your usual workforce is a pretty valid excuse. And if we're looking at an extended shutdown, I don't know if I'd be very optimistic that these dollars will flow. Next slide, please. So I've been doing workforce development policy for about 25 years. One of my favorite things about it is that it's a last lonely island of bipartisanship. Someone said to me a couple months ago, no politician, whatever their party, runs on fewer jobs or worse jobs. At the same time, I don't think it's uppermost in people's minds the way that, say, education might be. So it hasn't been a priority. And this is part of why it took about a decade for Congress to reauthorize the previous workforce law, the Workforce Investment Act, and we're 6 years and counting to reauthorize WIOA. That said, when WIOA replaced WIA in 2014, it passed the House with over 400 votes. So there is a lot of common ground there. Similarly, the Stronger Workforce for America Act, which would have reauthorized WIOA, passed last December by nearly as large a margin. It was going to be included in a continuing resolution or CR that funded the government, the one that they eventually passed in March. But Elon Musk unleashed a barrage of tweets blasting extraneous measures, quote, in the bill, some of which might even have included questionable information. I'll pause here for everybody to pick up the monocles that I'm sure are flying across the room with your shock. Either way, I'm sure that the result is that ASWA, the Stronger Workforce for America Act, was pulled from the final CR. Next slide, please. So as we entered 2025 in the second Trump administration, we had continuing uncertainty around workforce policy. And 9 months later, that's still the case. I think most of us tend to think of the actions of any executive administration, a mayor or a governor or a president, as guided by a single intention. And maybe that's true sometimes, but I don't think that's the case here. What I think we're seeing here is two essentially incompatible policy impulses. One represents relative continuity with the bipartisan consensus on workforce, obviously in service of this administration's priorities and goals on things like apprenticeship and artificial intelligence. But if you read the executive order on workforce the administration released in April, or the America's Talent Plan strategy from August, that's kind of the face that you'll see. And then the other face is the Make America Skilled Again block grant, which essentially would take 13 workforce programs, cut their collective funding by about half, and then shunt it all off to the states. And then the administration, of course, tried to unilaterally shut down Job Corps without going through Congress. These were ideological moves, as is the larger, push to reduce the entirety of the federal workforce. They aren't about delivering higher quality services, I would say, so much as they reflect someone's idea of what government should and shouldn't do. And we're seeing the same dynamic, obviously, through the shutdown now. Next slide, please. And then there's the Budget Reconciliation Act, HR 1. Now, if you're a fan of the social safety net and you remember your Greek mythology from when we were kids, this measure was kind of like Pandora's box, with all sorts of horrifying stuff coming out before a tiny sliver of hope at the end in the form of expanding Pell Grant eligibility to shorter term training programs. And this was a very workforce specific sliver of hope. As the image to the right suggests, this measure could push 10 million Americans off of their health insurance, and additional millions of supplemental nutrition assistance program recipients now having to meet work requirements in order just to get, subsistence food support. These cuts are going to resonate, these cuts to healthcare and social assistance, through state and local budgets. They're going to create gaps that have to be filled somehow, potentially by cuts to programs like those that we all care about, which provide job training and employment services. Next slide, please. Now, the bipartisan workforce tradition seems to be alive in the Senate. Back in July, the Appropriations Committee passed a funding measure for federal fiscal year 26 that would have kept funding for WIOA and related workforce programs essentially flat. There was a $10 million cut to WIOA adult, which is not ideal, but but it's not a game changer. That passed by a margin of 26-3. And then over on the House side, about 6 weeks later, they passed their measure, and that would basically end the workforce system as we've known it. That, of course, passed on a strict party line vote. The House Labor HHS education bill would end WIOA youth. It would, quote, freeze WIOA adult for a year, basically by making sure that that money we're waiting for them to obligate was rescinded. So 712 million in adult, something like 830 million in dislocated worker. You wouldn't see it until next fall. And it would kill a whole range of other initiatives, senior community service employment program, reentry. Now, it's worth noting that of the 12 spending bills the Appropriations Committee has to pass to fund the entire federal budget, this one went 12th, and the bills are interconnected. So labor, HHS education had less money to play with. And public health and education also took staggering hits. That was why the vote kind of went the way it did. Next slide, please. This is the side-by-side comparison with apologies for the small text. And for what it's worth here, I mean, you can sort of see the angry numbers in the red, which are the million or in some case over $1 billion cuts to programs in the House bill compared to the Senate. For what it's worth, we haven't talked to a single person, including Republican staff people, both to committees and members of Congress, who think this is likely to pass or even to come to the floor. But this is a strange time. We're not sure that the past is prologue. So we are being as vigilant as we can, and thanks to everybody who has helped push back against this. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what happens now. We've had shutdowns before. I'm not sure that we've had a shutdown before where the president's party is as in thrall to the president's will to the administration as we're seeing right now. I don't think they're going to make a deal until the administration is willing to let them make a deal. And we have this sort of conflict within the Trump administration between people who want to do policy and people who just want to win ideological fights. And it seems like that second group probably has the upper hand. Nor do the Democrats have a whole lot of short-term motivation to compromise. Their base obviously is not very happy generally, and they think they have a winning issue with the healthcare subsidies, which is what they're, primarily fighting over. Everyone seems to think they know how this ends, with a new continuing resolution to reopen the government while the parties negotiate. But how we get to that point, I think, is really unclear. Next slide, please. Just a couple quick thoughts before we open the floor. At the federal level, it seems pretty clear that we're going to be playing defense for the rest of this administration. Nor would the revival of the Stronger Workforce for America Act necessarily help. Programs that have current authorization are harder to cut, but as our lobbyist has told us, if this administration really wants to destroy something, they will expand the boundaries of the law and political possibility to try to do so. There's also just the fact that the Stronger Workforce for America Act really kind of punts on a lot of the major problems with WIOA. So there's a real question as to whether you'd want that reauthorization if it means perpetuating some of the problems of the status quo. Zooming out a little bit, I don't know if bipartisanship in workforce is dead or alive. The idea of prioritizing economic growth has really driven both parties, I would say, for more than a century. And it was understood that talent development is an important input to growth. But just to take this president and the vice president at their own words, this administration doesn't care as much about growth as they do about certain other things. So that's a dynamic we haven't really seen before. I think that if left to their own devices, the relevant committees in both chambers of Congress probably could find their way to common ground. But the Republicans, especially in the House, largely have ceded their agency as policymakers to the executive branch. So then it kind of comes down to this conflict within the administration between the people who are most interested in things like getting to 1 million apprentices or figuring out how to use AI to improve service delivery. And then on the other hand, this other faction who see any government program as inherently suspect. I really don't know how that struggle is going to play out. Next and final slide, please. That's it. Thanks so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. I'm only sorry I couldn't be there in person. Happy to take questions, hopefully some of which I can even answer.
David. So if there are folks with questions, you have to come on the mic for David to be able to hear. Really? No questions? Is it, I guess it's just that bad. Just no hope. I think everybody's shell shocked, David.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I mean, it's funny. I've been living with this for so long now. Before I took this role at NYTEP, I really prided myself on minimizing my exposure to, to national news. And now I'm just like, yes, it's very bad, but I think that the work we do is important. I think that people still recognize it. I mean, I can tell you, sort of in the vein of hope, like we've had meetings, as I said, with Republican staffers who, staffers to Republican House members, who have said, "Oh, that bill will never see the light of day. My boss wouldn't vote for it." I think a lot of this stuff is theater. The question is just with this administration, they are obviously very difficult to anticipate or predict because you don't know where their intention will be on any given day. But, I try to tell myself, because I'm certainly susceptible to getting dejected about these things, that like, this is not the end of the story. What we do is going to be important beyond this period of, performance and nonsense and malice and all of that. And we just got to stay at it.
In it for the long haul.
I mean, if you want to be depressed about something, I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan. We're down 2-0. We're going to Los Angeles, playing a dynasty team. Season's gonna end tonight. So I have my negative energy focus there. Randy, that was for you, buddy.
Friends there from the Mets fans in the room. Appreciate that. Thank you.
David, this is Chris Neal. I have one question for you, which is, I don't know if I would call it a silver lining, but can you talk about your response to the America's Talent Pipeline report that the U.S. Departments of Labor, Education, and Commerce published together a couple months ago?
Yeah. Yeah, I always struggle not to call it the America's Got Talent plan, just because I feel like that's sort of more brand aligned. But that's a great example of it's a great example of the sort of like in the bipartisan tradition vein of like that strand you see within Trump too. And Chris knows this. The guy who wrote it allegedly was the same guy who wrote the A Stronger Workforce for America Act, formerly Virginia Fox's main advisor on workforce on Elise Stefanik's staff before that. And, if you read that thing, you will see, in my eyes, a critique of the status quo workforce system that you'd really struggle to take much issue with. They talk about the fragmentation, they talk about the bureaucracy, they talk about how it's not employer friendly in the way it needs to be. I think that they miss a lot of nuance there, because their version of employer friendliness seems to be, hey, employers tell us what to do, and I think that we know that like that doesn't quite work. But the criticism of college for all, the need for alternatives, the focus on skills, there's a lot there that you can work with, and then you think about that and sort of juxtapose it with the idea of the Make America Skilled Again block grant, which would cut our total funding from something like 4.4 billion to 2.9 billion and throw it all in a burlap sack and kind of let the programs, fight it out in the river like, cats trying not to drown, and throwing it all to the states. And you're just sort of like, these are, as I said, these are sort of incompatible impulses. I don't know which will win out. You would think that the things they care about, rebuilding apprenticeship as a true alternative system to higher ed, the reindustrialization of America, you need a strong workforce system if you're serious about doing those things. I'm just not sure that the administration has had an internally frank conversation to figure out how that might resolve. But there are things in that plan that, that I found, I don't know if I'd say encouraging, but like I recognize the reality that the authors were coming from.
Hey, David, it's Randy. First of all, thank you for your frankness. And I do know you to be mostly an optimist. So in spite of the fact that you're a Phillies fan, it's hard for me to imagine in any scenario though, that what we do and what we care about on the workforce side is even a matter to those that are really trying to dismantle government as we know it. I mean, I want to point out a quote from yesterday with respect to furloughed workers, and this is coming from the president. It really depends on this is about back pay. It really depends on who you're talking about. But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people, he told reporters at the White House. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way. And he's got the power of Congress on his side. So, as much as there are Republicans who probably care about workforce, I don't think they care about it in the context of really what's going on. So, I mean, I hate to be, really, really pessimistic, but that's really what we're facing here.
I wouldn't dispute for a minute that, in the sort of mental calculus of every Republican member of Congress, they're whether it's a political calculation or, a true commitment to policy where they realize that like the ROI on this stuff is pretty good and you kind of need it both for political goals and longer term economic goals, like that's not going to matter as much as the pressure that the president can put on them. So then I think the question becomes who, if anybody, can put pressure on the president? And the easy thing to say, and I kind of go there too, is well, nobody. And then I think about, some of the things we've seen like with the bond market and, they're like that whole sort of Taco Trump meme may be overly applied, but I don't think I don't think it comes from nothing. I think that there are ways to push on this. I also think, I know this meeting's being recorded, and I've gotten in trouble before for saying things on recorded meetings that I perhaps shouldn't have. So I'm gonna try to avoid that. Shout out to my friend Greg Morris, who I know is in the room somewhere.
Yep, he is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'd say is I don't take any specific statement from that individual as necessarily binding on his future actions.
That since we've now lost whole segments of the workforce in like rural workers and farm workers and stuff like that, maybe that's what we have to advocate for, training in these sectors, since we've managed to get rid of a whole entire sectors of employment in this economy.
It's extremely concerning. I mean, and I know we're pressed for time, and I'm sure folks are, trying to get out of here. But like the one thing I'll say quickly, kind of beyond, like, if you want a reason for optimism around workforce, I got something for you. We are sort of tipping into, as I'm sure you all know, as I suspect the board has discussed, negative population growth. We are no longer replacing our workforce as older generations retire and pass on and newer generations rise up. The folks who are coming up are fewer in number. And the way that we squared that circle for a long time was immigration. But of course, that spigot has been all but closed. And whatever happens in the short term, I think it's gonna be a while before things go back to the pre-2025 norm. None of this is necessarily good, but I do think it sort of changes the calculus in terms of how we get certain parties, particularly on the employer and economic development side, to appreciate the value of the sort of traditionally underappreciated services that we provide as a field. Training becomes more important. Strengthening those ties between the employer community and the provider community become more important. Speaking with as unified a voice as we can manage as a field, that becomes more important. Like there is leverage in here somewhere. And I'm thinking a lot about the research that Lightcast has put out. If I can do a quick shameless plug, anybody coming up for the NIATEP conference in 2 weeks, we have Lightcast doing a keynote presentation on their Rising Storm report 1 year later. I'm certainly very excited to hear about that. There are possible futures where the issues that we all have kind of shaken our heads about, like, why isn't this getting more traction? They suddenly could get more traction. Even the changes in the higher ed, the post-secondary training landscape, like our moment could be coming. So, it's with that as much as anything else that I really try not just to lapse into, nothing matters or, this is hopeless or any of that. I don't know if I'd say I'm optimistic generally, but, I think it's worth staying in the fight.
Thank you so much. Question for you. Based on where we are, right? What does year 4 and how are we thinking about, cleanup, right? After the 4 years, what does repairing the system really looks like?
You're talking about Project 2029. I mean, this is where David, tend to get a little philosophical. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to core questions of what kind of a society and what kind of an economy do you want to have? Are we primarily concerned about maximizing profit opportunities for those already at the top, or are we trying to restore a floor? I mean, again, like I kind of mentioned this in my remarks, like for more than 100 years, both parties were concerned with growth. And the Democrats were also largely concerned with equity, and sometimes the Republicans too. And because of that, they generally could find sooner or later common ground on workforce. I still believe that that's the case. I don't think that these, I would say more fringe priorities of the current administration really have majority support. And I have no idea how this ends. I think about it every day and every night, as I'm sure most of the people in the room do. But I think, like the constructive answer I'd give to the question is, let's use this time to think now about the sort of system we want. And that's one reason why I'm not exactly mourning the A Stronger Workforce for America Act not passing. If you believe, as I do, that the system needs to kind of shift away from the sort of placement and short-term retention focus, and Chris talked through, and I believe Yuri as well, the WIOA measures, and congrats to everyone on the strong results. But we've seen that this doesn't necessarily lead to economic mobility and career success. I would argue that it's not really geared toward doing that. There was a great analysis from the Century Foundation that came out over the summer, where they really made the point that, this is a system that effectively subsidizes sort of low road employers who go on a high turnover model by reducing the cost to them of replacing workers. So if instead we would like to move towards something that emphasizes job quality, improving retention for employers, advancement over time, economic self-sufficiency for workers, that requires a rethink. And again, like just based on those demographic trends that I was talking about a minute ago, the immigration shutoff, we may find ourselves with some headway to push on some of those questions because the economics of it are going to change for employers. So, when I can pull my head out of the day-to-day fights right now, and when I'm not doing this, this sort of interesting job that I have with NYATEP, that's some of the stuff that I'm thinking about. How do we get to the point where, when the moment comes, we have a vetted, broadly supported plan that includes a whole bunch of win-wins for workers, employers, local governments, a lot of the stakeholders in play now, and a lot of the folks who are kind of on the sideline because we haven't done as good of a job as we need to at explaining ourselves and explaining the value of what it is we do.
Thank you, David, for the presentation, all your insights. And thank you, everyone, all the board members for coming to the meeting, the agencies, the staff, everybody. Want to appreciate and recognize that. So I just want to let you all know our next and final quarterly meeting is set for Wednesday, December 3rd, and we're going to go with the afternoon again. You're a lively bunch in the afternoon. So it's 3 to 5, Wednesday, December 3rd. And with that, I will take a motion to close the meeting. A second? All in favor? All right, motion carries. Getting a job.